Have you ever been in a situation where a woman you like just ignores you? No calls, no texts, no responses, like you suddenly became invisible. And it hits you hard, doesn't it? Well, in today's video, we're going to break down exactly how you should act when this happens. And I promise you, it's not what most people would tell you. I want to welcome you to the channel where we talk about relationships in a way that's real, personal, and sometimes uncomfortable. Because let's be honest, most advice out there is sugar-coated. It tells you to play it cool or wait patiently, but those clichés rarely work. In my years of experience as a therapist, I've seen countless men get stuck in this pattern, chasing, overthinking, constantly checking their phones. And every time, it's the same story. The more they chase, the further away she drifts. I've worked with men who felt completely powerless when someone they cared about ignored them. And the truth is, how you respond in these moments can completely change the dynamic between you and her. What I've noticed again and again is that it's not about manipulation. It's about self-respect, confidence, and understanding human behavior. When a woman ignores you, your reaction sends a silent message that's louder than any words. And here's the controversial part. The way most men react is exactly why she continues to ignore them. They act desperate, insecure, or needy, and it pushes her further away. So in this video, I'm going to guide you through a mindset shift, step by step, showing you how to act in a way that makes her notice you differently, without games, without drama, and most importantly, without losing yourself. I'll share insights from real experiences I've encountered in therapy, so you can see exactly how subtle changes in your actions create massive results. By the end of this video, you'll know not just what to do, but why it works. Because understanding the psychology behind her behavior is the key to getting her attention without losing your dignity. 1. Stop chasing, start living, stop chasing, start living. This is where most men go wrong. When a woman starts ignoring you, the instinct is to chase harder, to send more texts, call more, or even try to prove your worth. I've seen it countless times in my practice. Men come to me exhausted, frustrated, and confused, feeling like they've lost control of the situation. And the truth is, when you chase, you aren't just losing her attention, you're losing yourself. I remember working with a man who had been texting a woman nonstop for weeks, only to receive one-word replies or worse, none at all. He was drained, emotionally fragile, and constantly waiting for a sign from her. What he didn't realize was that every message, every attempt to force interaction was pushing her further away. His focus had shifted entirely to her behavior, and he had neglected the most important thing, his own life, his own energy, his own growth. This is the moment where you need to flip the script. When she ignores you, stop chasing. Instead of thinking about her every waking moment, start living your own life in a way that excites you, challenges you, and builds your confidence. Go out with friends, pick up a hobby you've neglected, focus on your health, your career, or even personal projects. When you immerse yourself in your life, something interesting happens. Your energy changes, your vibe changes, and it becomes impossible for her not to notice. The irony is that when you stop chasing, you start to attract. People are drawn to those who are fully engaged with their own lives, who have passions, purpose, and boundaries. Chasing, on the other hand, signals insecurity, neediness, and desperation, traits that are often repelling no matter how attractive you think you are. I've seen men who completely turned their approach around simply by deciding to live for themselves first. Within weeks, not only did their self-esteem improve, but the same woman who was ignoring them began reaching out, curious, intrigued, and interested. The lesson here is simple, but controversial. When she ignores you, your priority is not to win her over. Your priority is to win yourself over. Focus on your happiness, your growth, your energy. Stop placing her at the center of your world, and suddenly, everything shifts. She will notice the change, not because you manipulated her, but because you reclaimed your power. And that's the kind of presence that naturally draws people in, far more than desperate chasing ever could. 2. The power of silence. The power of silence. Many men underestimate this, and it's one of the most misunderstood tools in relationships. When a woman ignores you, the natural response is to fill the silence, texting, calling, asking questions, trying to fix the situation. But what if I told you that silence can be your greatest weapon, not a weakness? In my experience as a therapist, I've seen countless men ruin their chances simply because they couldn't sit with the silence. One man I worked with was constantly messaging a woman he liked, trying to get her attention, explaining himself, over-apologizing when she didn't respond immediately. Each message seemed logical to him, but from her perspective, it created pressure. It made him appear anxious, needy, and lacking confidence. That pressure doesn't attract, it repels. Silence, on the other hand, does something very different. It creates space, and space is where curiosity grows. When you stop over-communicating, you stop giving her reasons to dismiss you. You become unpredictable in the most attractive way. Women, like anyone else, are drawn to people who are self-contained, who have their own world and don't revolve around someone else's attention. Silence signals that you are emotionally strong, grounded, and independent. Here's what most men don't understand. Silence isn't about punishing her or playing games. It's about reclaiming your energy. When you stop responding impulsively, you're no longer reacting to her behavior. Instead, you're acting intentionally. You control your focus, your emotions, and your time. In therapy, I often help men practice this by creating small silence challenges, like waiting a few hours or even a full day before responding, no matter what they feel inside. The results are always eye-opening. Not only does their anxiety decrease, but their interactions become more meaningful when they finally do engage. Silence also communicates value without words. You're showing her that your life doesn't pause because she ignores you. You're demonstrating self-respect and confidence, two qualities that are inherently attractive. Think of it like this. If someone keeps chasing you, when you pull away, it's exhausting. But when someone maintains their calm, stays focused on themselves, and doesn't react desperately, it creates a magnetic pull. The power of silence is subtle but undeniable. It's a tool every man must master if he wants to navigate dating and relationships successfully. It teaches patience, self-discipline, and the importance of internal control. When you combine silence with a vibrant, purpose-filled life, you're no longer just reacting to her actions. You're creating an aura of intrigue and strength that naturally draws her in, without manipulation or desperation. 3. Shift your focus to yourself. Shift your focus to yourself. This might sound obvious, but most men completely miss the point. When a woman ignores you, your instinct is to zero in on her every action, dissecting texts, wondering why she hasn't replied, and obsessing over what you said or didn't say. In my years as a therapist, I've seen how destructive this pattern can be. Men come to me exhausted, anxious, and trapped in a cycle where their happiness is tied entirely to her attention. And here's the truth. No woman can fix that for you. Only you can. I remember one man who had been consumed by a woman's silence for weeks. He would rearrange his schedule just in case she called, spend hours thinking about how to get her to notice him, and replay every conversation in his mind. It wasn't just tiring, it was eroding his sense of self. When we worked together, the first step I gave him was simple but powerful. Shift your focus entirely to yourself. Not to manipulate her or make her jealous, but to reclaim your energy, your purpose, and your confidence. Focusing on yourself means diving into your own life with intention. It's about doing the things that make you feel alive, fulfilled, and proud. It could be advancing your career, starting a new hobby, hitting the gym, reconnecting with friends, or learning something you've always wanted to master. The key is this: your life becomes bigger than her silence. Your happiness becomes independent of her attention. The shift is subtle, but the impact is enormous. When a man stops revolving around a woman's reactions, he instantly becomes more attractive. Why? Because he demonstrates that he values himself more than the approval of anyone else. Confidence and self-sufficiency are magnetic. Women notice energy that is alive, vibrant, and unshakable, not someone constantly waiting for a response. I've seen this transformation in many men over the years. One man began focusing on his fitness, his friendships, and his passions instead of texting a woman who had been ignoring him. Within weeks, his demeanor changed. He walked taller, smiled more, and spoke with a calm, self-assured energy. Interestingly, the same woman who had ignored him started reaching out, curious about the change. It wasn't that he did anything to manipulate her, it was that by focusing on himself, he became a man of value in his own right. Shifting your focus to yourself is about reclaiming control. It's about proving, first to yourself, that your life isn't dependent on someone else's attention. When you embrace this mindset, you stop reacting impulsively to her silence and start creating a life that's compelling, meaningful, and irresistible. The more you invest in yourself, the less her ignoring you has power over your emotions, and the more naturally you attract the kind of attention you actually want. 4. Confidence beats desperation. Confidence beats desperation. This is where most men fail without even realizing it. I remember working with a man who had been in a relationship for several months, and suddenly the woman he cared about began pulling away. She wasn't responding to texts as quickly, sometimes ignored calls, and seemed distant. His instinct was to overcompensate, to send more messages, apologize for little things, and constantly seek reassurance. The more he did this, the more she seemed to drift. What he didn't realize was that desperation always sends the wrong signal. It communicates insecurity and neediness, which can quietly erode attraction. In contrast, confidence, even in the face of silence or distance, changes the entire dynamic. I guided him to shift his energy from chasing her to embodying confidence in his own life. He started setting boundaries with his time, focusing on things that mattered to him, and communicating in a calm, composed way when they did interact. He didn't stop caring. He stopped reacting out of fear, and the effect was immediate. Instead of a woman who seemed indifferent, he began noticing a shift in her energy. She became more engaged, more attentive, and curious about him again. Confidence is not about arrogance or playing games. It's about self-assurance, emotional stability, and maintaining your sense of worth regardless of someone else's behavior. When you act desperate, you communicate that your value is dependent on her attention. When you act confident, you communicate that your value is inherent. You're someone with a full, interesting life, and her presence is a choice, not a necessity. This is particularly powerful in relationships because women can sense emotional security. The man I worked with had previously been reactive. He would text constantly, worry when she was quiet, and read too much into minor actions. By embodying confidence, he created a stable environment. She could feel that he wasn't clinging or dependent, and that stability naturally drew her in. In fact, she began initiating conversations herself, respecting his space, and showing genuine interest again. Confidence beats desperation because it shifts the power balance in a subtle, healthy way. It's not about manipulation, it's about presence, composure, and self-respect. When you combine confidence with genuine focus on your own life, you create a magnetic energy that pulls rather than pushes. Desperation drives people away, while confidence creates curiosity, attraction, and deeper connection. So if you find yourself ignored or distant from someone you care about, remember this. The way you show up matters far more than what you say. Confidence isn't just attractive, it's transformative. And in relationships, it can be the difference between a connection that falters and one that thrives. 5. Subtle signals that speak volumes. Subtle signals that speak volumes. In relationships, it's often the small, almost invisible actions that communicate the most. I've worked with a couple where one partner had started ignoring the other, not out of malice, but because she felt a lack of emotional balance in the relationship. The man, desperate for attention, kept over-explaining himself, sending long texts and constantly asking if everything was okay. The problem wasn't what he said, it was what he unintentionally communicated through his behavior, insecurity, and neediness. I guided him to understand that in situations like this, subtle signals, what you do, how you carry yourself, and the energy you give off speak louder than words ever could. For example, when she ignored him, instead of panicking, he began demonstrating his self-respect through small, deliberate actions. He limited how often he checked his phone, focused on his personal routines, and maintained his social life without waiting for her validation. These were not dramatic gestures. They were subtle signals that said, I have my own life and I value myself. One of the most powerful shifts I saw was in how he communicated when they did interact. He no longer rushed to fill silences or overshare his feelings immediately. Instead, he listened carefully, responded calmly, and allowed space in the conversation. The subtle change in tone and presence created curiosity and attraction. She started noticing the change in his energy, the calm confidence, and the emotional stability he now projected. What had once been a source of tension became a point of intrigue. She began engaging more, seeking his attention rather than the other way around. Subtle signals aren't just about not chasing. They're about conveying stability, self-worth, and presence without saying it outright. A simple example, keeping your composure when she's quiet communicates emotional strength. Maintaining your daily routines and priorities shows independence. Smiling genuinely when you see her, rather than showing frustration or anxiety, communicates calm confidence. These small, consistent actions accumulate and make a far bigger impact than desperate attempts to regain attention. I've seen this principle work time and again. The man I mentioned earlier went from feeling powerless to becoming magnetic in her eyes, not because he tried harder or manipulated her, but because he became aware of the subtle signals he was sending. By shifting his behavior in small, intentional ways, he changed the emotional atmosphere of the relationship. Suddenly, he wasn't a man waiting for approval. He was a man with presence, balance, and calm confidence. Subtle signals might seem minor, but in reality, they are incredibly powerful. They communicate strength, independence, and self-respect, qualities that draw people in naturally. In relationships, these small signals often speak volumes, far beyond anything spoken aloud. They show her, without words, that you are a man of value, someone worth noticing, someone worth investing her attention in. 6. Why ignoring back can work. Why ignoring back can work. This concept makes a lot of men uncomfortable, and that's why it's so effective. When a woman ignores you, the natural reaction is to respond, to explain yourself, or to try and fix the situation. But what if I told you that sometimes the most powerful response is nothing at all? Not out of spite, not to play a game, but as a way to maintain your dignity and reset the balance. I remember working with a man who had been in a relationship for over a year. Lately, his partner had been distant. Short replies, canceled plans, and occasional silence. He tried everything, calling, texting, even apologizing for small misunderstandings. Nothing worked. The constant effort was draining him and, ironically, pushing her further away. That's when we explored the idea of intentionally giving space, allowing the silence to do the work. Ignoring back isn't about hurting her or punishing her. It's about showing that your attention isn't a commodity to be begged for. It communicates that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable. When you stop reacting immediately to her silence, you're sending a subtle but powerful message. You are in control of yourself, not her actions. In therapy, I often explain it this way. People are drawn to those who hold their own emotional ground. Desperation pushes people away. Composure pulls them in. For the man I worked with, the change was gradual but remarkable. Instead of sending multiple texts or calls, he focused on living his life fully. He spent more time with friends, pursued hobbies, and maintained his routines. When he finally did engage with her, it was calm, measured, and full of confidence. She noticed the shift immediately. The distance that had created tension now sparked curiosity. She began reaching out, showing interest and appreciating the space he had created. Ignoring back works because it flips the dynamic. Instead of you constantly seeking her attention, she begins to wonder about you, notice your presence, and feel the subtle pull of your confidence. It's not about manipulation. It's about creating an environment where your value is clear and undeniable. Silence and selective engagement allow your actions to carry more weight than words ever could. The key is balance. Ignoring back should never be used as a game or a way to punish her. It's about maintaining emotional independence while respecting your own boundaries. It's about giving space for curiosity, attraction, and genuine interest to grow naturally. I've seen men who mastered this approach completely transform their relationships. Suddenly, what felt like rejection became an opportunity to demonstrate composure, confidence, and self-worth. When done with intention and awareness, ignoring back becomes a tool of empowerment. It shows that you are not desperate, you are not reactive, and you are a man who values himself first. And in relationships, that is one of the most magnetic qualities a man can possess. 7. Building magnetic energy. Building magnetic energy. This is the culmination of everything we've discussed so far, and it's where transformation truly happens. When a woman ignores you, the real power lies not in chasing her or reacting impulsively, but in creating an energy that naturally draws her in. Magnetic energy isn't something you fake or force. It comes from self-respect, confidence, and a life that is compelling on its own. I've worked with men in relationships where tension and distance created a sense of frustration. One man, in particular, was struggling because his partner had begun withdrawing emotionally. Every attempt to reconnect felt forced, and the relationship was stagnating. When we focused on building his magnetic energy, the change was subtle but profound. He didn't try to control her reactions or demand attention. Instead, he invested fully in himself. He pursued his goals with intensity, spent quality time with friends, cultivated new skills, and maintained a calm, grounded presence when interacting with her. Magnetic energy comes from consistency and alignment with your values. It's not about being mysterious for the sake of it or playing games. It's about becoming a man whose presence feels alive and balanced. I often tell men in therapy that people are drawn to energy, not desperation. When you exude stability, passion, and authenticity, attraction follows naturally. For the man I mentioned, the shift was noticeable not only in his partner's renewed interest, but also in how he carried himself. He became engaging without trying, confident without needing approval, and interesting without performing. Another aspect of magnetic energy is emotional independence. When a woman ignores you, the temptation is to let her silence dictate your mood. Magnetic men do the opposite. They maintain equilibrium regardless of external validation. This emotional steadiness sends a powerful signal. You are in control of yourself, not dependent on her actions for your happiness. Over time, this calm, centered energy makes a man irresistible, not because he is manipulative, but because he embodies qualities that are universally attractive: strength, stability, and self-worth. Magnetic energy also involves subtle social dynamics. Men who cultivate it attract attention naturally because they are fully present in their interactions, confident in group settings, and engaged in meaningful conversations. It's about creating a presence that commands attention without demanding it. In my experience, women respond positively when they sense that a man is engaged with life fully, rather than fixated solely on her. Ultimately, building magnetic energy is about reclaiming your power. It's about living a life that excites you, maintaining emotional control, and projecting confidence that draws others in effortlessly. When you combine these elements, self-focus, confidence, subtle signals, and emotional independence, you become magnetic. And in relationships, that energy can turn distance into connection, indifference into curiosity, and silence into genuine interest. When a woman ignores you, your response defines the outcome. Chasing, over-explaining, or reacting out of desperation only pushes her further away. Instead, focus on yourself. Embrace silence and build confidence that radiates naturally. Subtle actions, emotional independence, and magnetic energy speak louder than words ever could. By reclaiming your life, valuing your time, and maintaining your composure, you shift the dynamic entirely. Attraction grows from presence, not pursuit. Remember, it's not about controlling her attention. It's about owning your own energy, living fully, and becoming a man whose life is so compelling that she can't help but notice.